When you talk about a survival story, you generally think about a setup like being shipwrecked on a desert island or having a plane crash in the wilderness. The struggle is then for the survivors to cope with loneliness and get the necessities of life: food, water, shelter, that type of thing. Getting transported to a labyrinth in another world and reborn as a baby spider is a more original setup, especially when not getting eaten by monsters is added to the list of struggles. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the story with that original premise. So I'm a spider, so what? The setup for Spider is as follows. A group of high school students get transported to a fantasy world and reincarnated. Some are reborn as sons and daughters of nobility, others as elves or dragons, but our protagonist, Kumoku, is less lucky. She gets reborn as a baby spider in a monster-infested dungeon, and then has to try to survive by eating monsters while not getting eaten herself. At least, that's the first part of the story. Within the first several volumes, she evolves several times, Pokemon style, and gets to the point where she can defeat dragons. So after that, survival becomes less of a focus, and there's more intrigue and action. Sadly, Kumoku's story is not the only one we follow. There's also Shun, another reincarnated classmate, who's reborn as a prince and is as generic a righteous hero figure as they come. His side of the story is used to flesh out the world and explain what's happened to the other classmates that got reincarnated, which is useful, I guess, but following the little prince going to school and growing up isn't nearly as interesting as the life and death struggles of a spider. Despite the situation Kumoku has been dumped in, she has a bright, happy-go-lucky personality. Given that most of the monsters aren't great conversationalists, she doesn't talk out loud much, but her inner monologues reveal a real sense of humor, and that is only elevated when she gains multiple minds. These are clones of her consciousness that she uses to control mind, body, and magic, and that happen to frequently trash talk each other. She's prideful, a bit lazy, maybe a bit crazy, and an absolute joy to follow. As for the other characters, well, Shun the prince is as boring as Kumoku is interesting. A complete Mr. Nice Guy and the type of person who would normally be the isekai's protagonist. Sue, his cute little sister, is infatuated with him, because of course she is. Kacha, his best friend from Japan, male reincarnated as female, is infatuated with him too, which actually is more interesting. The story looks at how being reborn in a new body would change your personality, and Kacha is a prime example of this. Sadly, this examination doesn't extend to another reincarnator. Hugo, the bully in Japan, turns psycho in the New World, who gets little more characterization than being petty and evil. And, well, other than that, we have Philomos, the caring but weird former teacher, Faerun, who's reincarnated as Shun's pet dragon, and a whole bunch of demons who seem interesting, but I won't get into their story because, well, spoilers. At least for the first couple of volumes, Kumoku really carries the entire story on her back. Interestingly, Spider has a lot of the same appeal as the Shonen Battle series. We get to watch as our protagonist trains, goes through battles, gets stronger, and gains new abilities. It just cuts out all the power of friendship BS and moralizing. Our protagonist pretty much goes with her whims, healing one party of adventurers she takes pity on, and massacring the next that dares to burn her nest. With all that time not spent on Nakama power speeches, we instead get more time to watch Kumoku's epic battles with hordes of giant wasps, monster monkeys, and even dragons. Also, because of Kumoku's stat distribution, highly focused around speed and skills, she never wins battles just by brute forcing things, but instead making use of tricks, traps, and debuffs. The series' narration is also a strong point. In the sections of the story focused on Kumoku, there are no interactions between characters to drive the story forward, and this could have very easily led to a lot of morose introspection. But the story as narrated by her is continually upbeat and humorous. Her enthusiasm is infectious when she's excited about something, and her commentary outside of that is filled with wit. Regardless of what she's doing, good or evil, you as a reader can't help but cheer for her. Well, as I alluded to before, I'm really not a fan of the sections of the story narrated by Shun, following the characters who were reincarnated as humans. Aside from the fact that he's boring as hell as a narrator, his side of the story is super generic isekai fare. It's sort of like the author wanted to contrast all the charm of Kumoku's sections with Shun's blandness to say, see, this is what a normal isekai is like. Isn't Spider so much better? Hell, even his fights are boring and straightforward. It creates a situation where whenever I come to a chapter narrated from his perspective, I just groan and feel a very strong temptation to skip over it completely. This could easily be fixed, either by making Shun, Katja, and Co. more likable characters so that the reader cared about them, or by making their side of the story less predictable to at least engage the reader's curiosity. As it is though, the S chapters, with Shun's narration, suck all the charm out of the story. Oh, and while I'm on the note of things that I feel like skipping through, Kumoku's skill list starts to get a bit out of hand by the third volume. When it takes more than one page just to list a character's stats and skills, and they're listed more than once in a volume, maybe it's time to look at condensing things just a bit. 5% of a volume being stat and skill sheets seems a bit excessive. Swan with Spider So What is very much a story driven by the strength of its protagonist. If you like Kumoku, you'll definitely enjoy this series. There's no fanservice or excessive gore to drive people away, so I would recommend everyone at least try it out and see if you fall in love with the heroine in the same way that I did. If you've already read Spider and are looking for something similar, I would recommend That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, a more relaxed take on getting reincarnated as a monster in a fantasy world, with just as cute a protagonist. Alternately, if you like the setup of a whole class of high schoolers getting transported to a fantasy world, you could also try out Ari Fureta, which starts the same as Spider, but then has a whole lot more fan service and edge. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for listening. Cheers!